welcome back to Obsessive Prepper-AZ. I promised you all a wonderful mushroom soup recipe that is so easy to make. Now I'm going to go ahead and use the mushrooms that I used. These are the ends and pieces of the mushrooms I didn't dehydrate. Now if you're new to my channel and haven't seen, I've got a video out on how to dehydrate mushrooms. So these are the pieces, and of course I used a little extra because I wanted a lot of mushrooms in my soup. But these are the fresh ones. Now on my dehydrated ones, what I was talking about was using dehydrated mushrooms in a mushroom soup. Now we went ahead and dehydrated our mushrooms to make them shelf stable. Because on my channel, I'm all about a prepper. I'm all about prepping, and I'm all about food storage, stable food storage that we can have on our shelf, that we can grab, and it's not in your refrigerator. It's not that you didn't have it and you can't make something. All we've got to do is reach, get our dehydrated mushrooms, reconstitute them. Depending on the recipe you're going to do, maybe you don't even need to reconstitute them. So that being said, I'm going to show you real quick on how I rehydrate the mushrooms if we're going to use our food storage, and then I'll get to cooking and showing you how to make a wonderful mushroom soup. So this is our dehydrated mushroom. I'm just doing a little bit of them just to show you how they reconstitute, because I really want to use my fresh ones before they go bad. But I'm going to get this in the microwave real quick. So I've got my mushrooms down here. We're going to go ahead and let them steep a while. But I wanted to talk about a couple different things. Now this recipe at the end I'm going to show you is all fresh ingredients. But let's just say we don't have fresh ingredients. All we have is our food preps, and we want to make this soup. Now, normally on a fresh mushroom soup, we're gonna saute some onions in olive oil, maybe some butter if we have it, and then we're gonna add in our mushrooms and saute those, and then add the other ingredients. If we're only using our dehydrated mushrooms, what we wanna do is get some water boiling. Do not add any salt to dehydrated vegetables, because when you do that, it stops the process of them rehydrating. So add your salts and seasonings more to the end versus layering from the start. So when we're using our dehydrated, we're going to go ahead and reconstitute them in a bowl, and then we can saute our onions, but let's say we don't have any onions. So all we've got to do is, these are green onions here that I've got dehydrated. You could use something like this. You can go buy the old standby onions, or maybe you dehydrate your own onions. If you don't know how to do that, I've definitely got a video on dehydrating your own onions. So that is one of those things where if you don't have those ingredients, there gives you a couple different options of using your food pantry. Also, we're going to use the chicken stock, vegetable stock. I like to add chicken and beef to mine. That's just my preference to mushroom soup. I also add a can of beef broth. And then at the very end, we add some milk. Generally like a half. If you want some of the extra calories, super yummy is your whipping cream, but we're in a pinch, we don't have it, then we're gonna go ahead and add a can of evaporated milk. So you always think about what's in your pantry that you can make a wonderful meal without having to always have fresh. And as a prepper, we're going to have a lot of food storage, and we're going to use and rotate our food storage. So I'm always telling you, rotate, rotate, rotate. So now our mushrooms, once they reconstitute, you see that brown in it? This dehydrated mushroom makes a wonderful mushroom soup. The flavors are so much more intense on a dehydrated mushroom. And just to give you an idea, they start getting pliable. The longer they cook, the longer they're in the water, they're gonna come back to like life. Now they do get a tendency to get, I don't know, like a little chewy, not much. So if you don't like the texture once they're reconstituted, I normally with an immersion blender at the end will do immersion blender on my soups anyways, especially my mushroom. So your immersion blender will break that up. If you don't have an immersion blender, maybe use just your regular blender or something like that. But this is gonna be a fresh mushroom soup recipe, so come on. All right, I'm going to just go ahead and do a generous amount of our olive oil here. And I'm going to add probably, I don't know, 3 tablespoons of butter. And I'm going to put 1 chopped onion in this. So I have my butter almost melted. Now I apologize on the recipes because normally I cook for an army and I play everything by ear. I don't normally have recipes. I just add to what I feel like I want. And especially if you don't like onions, don't add a lot of onions or omit the onions completely. So you cook for what your tastes are, and if you like certain things, add a little bit more to it. I'm also about seasonings and adding layers to it. So if I'm doing regular food, fresh food, I'm going to add my seasonings with layers. I'm never going to tell a person to do a half a teaspoon of salt. Taste it, add some more until you get to the end because you can't take the seasonings away. So I believe it's always better to keep adding as you go. So I'm going to add some cracked pepper to this. All know and watch my videos, I'm a big fan of Lowry's garlic salt. Now we're just going to add our mushrooms. Now I'm going to add a clove of garlic. And we're going to add layers again. So I'm going to do a teeny bit more of garlic. Salt, if you don't want the salt, just use regular garlic. Couple more grinds of pepper. Now at this point, if we were just using our dehydrated mushrooms, you would have sauteed your onions and then we would have added our mushrooms and the broth. You do not want to get rid of the mushroom broth because that's where the flavor's at also. So I've got my mushrooms done. I'm going to just go ahead and add these in. I'm going to add a little bit of Worcestershire sauce in. Now I'm going to add my beef broth and my chicken broth. I have some thyme here. If you have fresh, that's great. If not, dried. If you grow your own, dehydrate your own. I'm going to go ahead and add probably the equivalent of a half a teaspoon. Rub it through your fingers so you can break it up and get the oil loose in it. And this I'm probably going to go back and add some more later after I get my cream in. So now all I'm going to do is I'm going to let this simmer. I want some of my broth to get cooked into my mushrooms, but I also want to have it dissipate some of it out and then only have the taste of the broth in there. So we're going to go ahead and let this simmer. And I would say it depends on you. You're going to simmer your liquid down enough that you can add a little bit of cream in to make it that thick, wonderful taste to it. But if you leave too much broth in and you don't let it boil down enough, you're gonna have too much broth and it's just gonna be a watery mushroom soup where we want a thick mushroom soup. So you can see I've got it to a boil. I'm gonna go ahead and turn this down on a low, medium low, and let this go ahead and cook a while. So I've let this go ahead and simmer down for 20 minutes. And this is where you now want to taste it, see if you're going to add any seasonings to it. Perfect time to do it before you add your cream. Again, it's always about layering. So I'm going to go ahead and add some more Worcestershire sauce to this. You know, this really is a wonderful seasoning to add depths of flavor to. So you pick up some of this. It stores for a long time, especially preppers. It's great. If you haven't used it, get some. I'm going to add some nature's seasonings. I love my nature's seasonings. Most of the products I use have some salt in it, so you have to be careful. If I had a salt lick, I'd probably lick a salt lick. I love salt. So in my recipe, if you have issues where you can't use salt or you don't like salt, health reasons you can't use it, just cut back a little bit. This is one of my go-tos for potato salad. Works great for potato salad. I'm going to add just a little bit more thyme. Now when you're using fresh, you're not going to use as much. So I'm using dried, so I'm going to use just a little extra to get that flavor. And then my family, we love red pepper. So just, I don't know, a pinch of red pepper. It's not supposed to be spicy, but I like it to have just a teeny bit of a bite to it. The last thing I'm going to use is some sherry. Now this is strictly up to you if you have it or don't. I've made it several times without the sherry. I'm going to go ahead and add about a tablespoon, a little bit more than a tablespoon of sherry to this. Now I'm going to add a half a cup of half and half. And I'm going to go ahead and add a half a cup of heavy whipping cream. So with cooking, everything is a personal choice, obviously. How much cream you want in it. Do you want those extra calories or you want to pull back some? Do you have the whipping cream? Just use your half and half. If you don't have either, use a can of evaporated milk. Either way, it's all personal choice what you have in your pantry. You just need to go past the, oops, I don't have it in my pantry, and move to the next thing. I'm going to go ahead and let this simmer down just a little longer, and then I'll do my immersion blender, and then I'll show you the end result. I have my immersion blender. Now when you use an immersion blender, make sure you don't come up in it because it shoots it everywhere, especially with hot liquids. So I'm just going to go ahead and get my immersion blender in here, and I'm going to chop everything up. You're going to decide how much you want your soup broke down. Do you want all the mushrooms broke down, or do you want some pieces of mushrooms in? So just keep using the immersion blender till your consistency. Taste your soup. You may want to add a little bit more half and half to it. Now, I do not do a roux of like flour. I do not use flour in my soup, and strictly because I don't think it needs it. When you break it down and you've cooked it like this, you don't need to add any flour to it, especially my husband doesn't need that gluten. So we're pretty much done. I'm going to go ahead and let it cook for about probably 5 more minutes, and then I'll put it in a bowl and I'll get back with you. Our soup is completely done, ready to eat. It is so simple to do. So simple by using your long-term food storage, your dehydrated mushrooms. Turns out super yummy. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe. If you want to be notified for future videos, ring the bell. Have a blessed day.